Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first segment of our first episode of our new show, Azimuth Podcast. We're a variety show focusing on news, politics, leadership, and family values. In this episode, we'll discuss why we started our podcast, why you should even listen to us, and what's up with people recently being detained, including a U.S. Army soldier running in North Korea and a female truck driver being detained in Dubai. And lastly, we'll discuss former President Trump's classified document trial date and what a security clearance even is.
I'm Kimberly McNabb.
And I'm Barrett McNabb, and we are truly excited to have you with us. So, Kimberly, why did we start this podcast?
Well, Barrett, you are so good at keeping up with what's going on in the world and tying it into your life experiences. I often feel that others would be so enriched to learn from our chats that we get to have after putting the kids to bed, and I thought we should include others into the conversation.
Yeah, I completely agree with you in wanting to form an educated community where we can share thoughts and ideas. We have a strong nuclear family with strong patriotic values, and it seems that the moderates in this country are just being drowned out. We're just an average husband and wife, but we have extraordinary life experiences.
So I'm sure that everyone is dying to know what is up with the name Azimuth for our podcast.
Well, Kimberly, this is a lensatic compass, and it's what we in the military use to land navigate from point A to point B. The azimuth is your line in a designated direction and point. And the path you're taking is not just the direction you're going, but it does get you from point A to point B, and it really does help you to have an azimuth to be able to know where your destination is going to be. Unfortunately, we're seeing our country beginning to head into a direction that is not conducive for the American dream. And external and internal threats are real, and if we're not brave enough to talk about them, America is not going to be the same country that we and our parents knew and loved.
For instance, you and I both grew up being able to play in the street for hours on end, and our parents didn't have to hover over us, and they could send us to school trusting that not only would we learn good facts and the values the teachers instilled in us would also align with the values that our parents at home instilled in us. And I honestly can't say that would be the case today.
Yeah, I completely agree. I remember as a child being in kindergarten, having a bike and having my friends and being able to just ride around. I grew up in Indiana and Texas, and my parents just wouldn't see us, for hours on end. We would just ride around the neighborhood, taking honeysuckle off of neighbors' yards on their fences, and really just being wholesome. I can remember that we still lived in an area where we didn't lock the doors. I mean, what was your experience growing up as a kid?
Very similar to that. We would run in and out of our neighbors' backyards. Our neighbors could trust that we weren't going to destroy their property. Our parents could trust that no one was going to hurt us in the process. Basically the only nuisance thing that would happen is our neighbors' kids would want to come see what we got for Christmas at 7 a.m. on Christmas morning.
I love it. Well, something about you, I know you're a big runner, and I know you just recently accomplished a major milestone. Talk to us about that.
I've run a marathon in all 50 states.
I'll be honest, I don't know a lot of people that have been to all 50 states, much less ran a marathon in all 50 states.
It's surreal to be able to say that I finished such a task. Like any formidable thing that you hope to accomplish, it seems surreal once you get on the other side. I'm sure one day, like many people, seem surreal when our children are grown. But yeah, it's been kind of a crazy thing, and having children in the middle of it was definitely not conducive to such a goal.
Right, and I know some of the races you ran in, including Portland and San Francisco. I know they were post pandemic. What's kind of the situation that you saw on the ground, just from your experience?
So before the lockdowns, people would not there was no timidity in going up and talking to another runner before the race, because you have this common. And it can be your first marathon. I've met people who've done hundreds, if not thousands. You could go up and talk to anybody about running, whether it was how nervous you were or what your strategy was or any setbacks you've had in your training. Diet, if you have someone on the course to cheer you on, even though it's the world's most boring parade, as most of the posters people hold up say. But the ones I did after, you have to worry about, getting tested, or if you've had the vaccination, and then, there's this undercurrent, tense undercurrent of people sizing each other, not if they're a good runner or not, which is the only thing that's really relevant and, your common enjoyment of it, but, if you're vexed or not, and any political leanings associated with that. And, you're there to have fun. You're there to hopefully make some nice friends.
Right.
Sometimes you get in conversation and, you talk a lot about where you've run, and with the tension, it's hard to do that, and it's not that much fun.
No, that makes a lot of sense. It really, really does. I mean, it's just an amazing feat. I know as you go throughout the United States, the politics change drastically, and I know vaccination status changed drastically as you navigated through. Were there any roadblocks?
Yes. So I qualified for Boston in 2020. A lot of people either gained weight or lost weight. A lot of us gained weight, and but I think a lot of us felt like nothing was in our control. And so for me, I really wanted to have one thing in control, and that was my running. So I qualified for Boston, and they either wanted you to go through, multiple COVID tests, and it was, and the news on the rules kept changing day to day, and you have to plan something like that months, if not a year in advance. And I didn't want to spend all this time and money and the nerves of doing the marathon prior to getting there, just to get there and realize, oh, I failed a COVID test. So that's nerve-wracking, and then you have to get the shots and whatnot. So yeah, you're already a bundle of nerves with the travel and hoping your plane doesn't get canceled, or if you don't have bad weather, because like I said, you have to plan it at least 6 months in advance. And so yeah, it's just a bundle of nerves you don't need. Oh, and for us, getting Nana to come out, for a week to watch the kids, and that is someone else's paid time off that she has to plan a year in advance.
Right. And, we've been married 11 years. And, gentlemen, that's a tip for you. Notice I didn't ask that as a question to my wife. I knew that right off the bat because I keep track of that. But we've been married 11 years, and approximately half of it was when I was in the Army as an officer, and half of it has been as I retired. And we have a number of small business owners that we own, mostly small box retail. And, it just with COVID, I mean, we were able to survive. It was difficult, just like many small business owners. It took a lot of ingenuity and a lot of doing a lot of research and looking for ways to have economic input injected in and capital injected into the businesses. But I tell you what, it was just a life-changing experience for so many, and we were able to get through it, and we're still feeling the effects. I mean, obviously there's economic headwinds that are going on right now, but we're able to adapt and overcome, and I know a lot of business owners are suffering out there, and we definitely feel for you because we know the pain.
Now, Barrett, you mentioned that you're in the Army. Would you mind telling everyone, why did you get in the Army? How did it happen?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the infantry in 1999 from a small school in Huntsville, Texas called Sam Houston State University. And I was stationed all over the world. I've kind of walked everywhere. My first duty assignment, I was stationed in Korea, and then I made my way to the 82nd Airborne Division, and where I spent the preponderance of my time as a paratrooper, where I did all the requisite camping trips to Iraq and Afghanistan and North Africa. As I got promoted, I transitioned into a foreign area officer, and that had me selling weapons to foreign militaries and foreign governments, working with the Defense Intelligence Agency, and we were stationed in U.S. embassies all over the world. So how I got there, when I signed up for my college classes as a freshman, it was it was like a newspaper, and you picked your classes. And I picked this one that really stood out to me as a good business class, leadership and management techniques. And when I showed up to the class, I was sitting in the classroom, and the instructor walked in wearing camouflage uniform and had a flat top. And I was like, what is going on here? And as we, he introduced himself, and he said, welcome to Leadership and Management Techniques, Military Science 101, ROTC. And I looked around, and I was not the only one that had made the mistake. And so we were all just kind of looking at each other like, what did we get ourselves into? And a couple weeks later, the person sitting in front of me had a camouflage uniform on, and I said, hey, man, where'd you get that? And he said, well, I joined this special organization called Ranger Company and ROTC, and you got to come check it out. And I went out there, liked what I saw, and went to airborne school as a cadet to be a U.S. Army paratrooper, and then went back-to-back to Schofield Barracks, Hawaii to go to Air Assault School, where I learned the art of helicopter infantry and how to sling weapons and equipment via a helicopter. And I tell you what, the rest was history. I got commissioned and was just super proud to be able to be in the Army and serve my country. I tell you, it made me the person and the man that I am today, and I'm just beyond excited. It's helped me in my my personal life. It's helped me in my business skills. I didn't have any business knowledge or background, but my military operational planning experience overlaid very well with the business world. Both of us had high-level security clearances that we'll talk about later, but that Kimberly got in the embassy when we were in Morocco. And I tell you what, it's just been an amazing experience, not only getting older, but also being married to you, and to have our 2 children. We have a 6-year-old son and a 4-year-old daughter. And I tell you what, they are a handful. They are a handful. I think you and I were talking and said one time that nothing will make you grow up faster than having children. And I definitely agree with you on that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome. Well, that's a little bit about us. Please continue on to the next segments. We have 2 more segments coming up, and we would love for you to stick around right after these messages.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy our show with all the stories we share, we would love your support.
And it's as easy as clicking that subscribe or follow button. This will ensure you never miss an episode and keeps us bringing you these important stories. Your support makes a huge difference. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast family.
Thanks, and keep tuning in.
And I took another step, and they both kneeled and chambered around from their rifles, and that I did understand. And Sergeant Coe came up and said, "Sir, they're saying if you take another step, they're going to shoot you." Welcome back to the second segment of our first episode of the Azimuth podcast. I'm Barrett, and always joining me is my wife, Kimberly McNabb. Now we're going to go ahead and shift gears a little bit and dive into a pressing issue that involves a couple of fellow Americans abroad.
That's right, Barrett. Today we're first discussing the case of Tierra Young Allen, a social media influencer from Texas known as Sassy Trucker on TikTok, who's been detained in United Arab Emirates, or UAE, for more than 2 months.
Yes, and this story is deeply unsettling. Allen was in the UAE with a friend from Nigeria when she got involved in a car accident, but the ensuing chain of events was something nobody could have predicted.
Absolutely, Barrett. After the accident, Allen went to retrieve her belongings from the rental car company. But when she was asked to pay thousands of dollars, things quickly escalated. The associate started to yell. Allen responded in kind, and soon law enforcement was called, and she was arrested.
It's important to highlight here that the UAE has a very specific set of laws criminalizing actions like swearing, rudeness, and insulting gestures. Allen's mother, Tina Baxter, has noted that it wasn't the car accident that led to her arrest, but rather the reaction at the rental car company when she found out the exorbitant fee to retrieve her belongings, including her passport.
Right, Barrett. According to Baxter, her daughter became a target when the authorities realized she was a U.S. citizen. She says, and I quote, "People just think she's just some screaming monster when she's a very soft-spoken young lady. She was only pushed to the edge to respond back after she was afraid and being extorted for money and misled."
And this seems to be a reoccurring issue. According to Radha Sterling, who leads a UK-based human rights advocacy organization detained in Dubai, has witnessed similar situations with other Americans in the UAE who ended up paying large sums of money just to get their passports back and leave the country.
Yes, and in Alan's case, the police in Dubai have said that this incident has nothing to do about yelling, but is allegedly a slander/libel case. They probably have said this in response to the large international media coverage the case is receiving. Sterling has pointed out that she has been charged, her passport is being held by the police, and she is not permitted to leave the country. If the police choose to prosecute, a process that can take several months, she could potentially face up to 2 years in prison if convicted.
I tell you what, it's a sobering thought and a stark reminder of the potential challenges that American citizens may face when they're abroad. But it's good to know Alan's family has reached out to Texas Representatives Sheila Jackson Lee and Senator Ted Cruz for assistance.
Yes, and Cruz's office has confirmed that they are monitoring the situation and are in touch with Alan's family. They are also liaising with the Department of State about the case.
Well, I tell you what, let's hope the situation can be resolved quickly and that Alan can be returned home safely. We'd like to make sure that we remind our listeners to stay aware, stay vigilant, stay safe when you're overseas, and most importantly, keep your passport on you. Don't ever give it up while in a foreign country. If needed, make a color copy with all your information and hand over the copy.
Great advice. Now, Barrett, you used to travel over to that area often while working at the U.S. Central Command.
Yeah, you bet. I was the country desk officer for the United Arab Emirates, Oman, and Yemen, traveling at least about every 3 weeks over to the Arabian Peninsula. I spent a lot of time in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Muscat, and when we had a U.S. embassy there, Sana'a, Yemen.
Any similar stories that you saw?
Absolutely. One time I was in Muscat, Oman for a high-level military meeting and negotiations when I overheard a commotion at the hotel lobby front desk. And I tell you what, it was definitely one of those things that just catches you. It was such a big, huge commotion. As I went up to the front desk, I was reminded that earlier that week, there was a U.S. Marine captain that was in the south of the country and had gotten in an altercation with the front desk associate and was yelling and screaming. Unfortunately, the police were called and the Marine captain was arrested. The ambassador really had no choice but to PNG him out of the country, which stands for declaring him persona non grata, and which is State Department speak for get out. I'm sure there was probably some administrative action that was taken against him when he got back home, but still he was arrested for screaming and yelling at front desk staff. So as I got up to the front desk, I could see that the woman was extremely aggravated, and I could tell that she was an American citizen. And as she was screaming at the front desk, she was talking about how her AT&T cell phone wasn't working, and that she had paid for an international plan for her phone, and she was frustrated that it wasn't working. As she was trying to contact AT&T, it was a comedy of errors. Because her cell phone was not working, she couldn't contact AT&T to resolve the situation, and she was taking her frustrations out on the front desk associate in the hotel in Muscat, Oman. And she was screaming, "Look, I don't speak Omani," which is a mistake right off the bat because they speak Arabic there. But still, I could see the situation was quickly spiraling out of control. So I approached her and showed her my embassy credentials and said, "Look, can I please talk to you over here just real quick?" And I said, "Look, here is my international government BlackBerry. Your taxes pay for it already. So go ahead and use my BlackBerry to make that phone call in order to resolve your situation. I'm going to be sitting in a chair in the lobby. When you're done, please just come on over here, and I'd like to talk to you for a bit." So she made her phone calls and I guess resolved her situation with AT&T. And as she came over and sat down next to me, I said, "Look, this is a piece of advice that I can give you, and it's up to you if you're going to accept it or not or blow me off. But you need to remember where you are." and you are not in the United States of America. You are in the Middle East. And so you need to always remember where you are. The same liberties that you have or think you have in the United States about having free speech and being able to say whatever you want without repercussion, you need to make sure that you check that at the door when you travel into an area of the world where you do not have that right. And so I said, look, I just saved you from going to jail. I could read the body language of the front desk associates, and they were about to call the police.
Sounded like she needed to check her azimuth.
Yeah, exactly. So she did thank me, and said that she understood everything that I had said, and I hope she learned her lesson. I really do, and I hope she went on to do great and wonderful things. So the other currently evolving situation involves U.S. Army soldier Private Travis King, who recently crossed into the border into North Korea.
Yes, the tale of Private King is somewhat layered. His situation, which has now become an international incident, is a result of a sequence of events. Travis was stationed in South Korea, part of the 1st Armored Division, and has had a troubling track record in the past year.
Yeah, now some background. Back in October 2022, he was arrested following an altercation between 2 South Korean nationals. And according to Army officials, he also damaged a police car during the incident.
It appears that he pleaded guilty to these charges and was fined about $4,000 by the Seoul Western District Court in February. However, it is not entirely clear if these were for the same incident. He had been on assault charges, released on July 10th, and was supposed to be sent back to Fort Bliss, Texas.
Yeah, interestingly, he was awaiting an administrative separation, with more than likely facing a dishonorable discharge from the Army upon his return to the U.S., so due to his overseas criminal convictions. So it appears his military career was on the verge of ending.
But then everything took a dramatic turn. He was escorted to the airport by military police officers who had to stop at security/customs, leaving Private King by himself. From there, he slipped away, joining a tour group headed to Panmunjom, the Korean border village.
And I tell you what, this is where the story takes a truly international turn. While laughing, according to people that were witnesses there, he made a dash across the border into North Korea. It's a place filled with tourists and is heavily monitored by guards on both sides. The joint security area there includes South Korean soldiers as well as United States service members.
Upon reaching the North Korean side of the border, King was detained. According to Colonel Isaac Taylor, who is a spokesperson for U.S. Forces Korea, King willfully and without authorization crossed the military demarcation line into the Democratic People's Republic of Korea.
And I tell you what, now the situation has really shifted gears to a diplomatic level. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has noted that they're closely monitoring the situation and investigating the situation, and they have notified King's next of kin. However, we don't have formal diplomatic relations with North Korea, and so it's very difficult to have open and clear communications, which is just going to exacerbate this situation.
It seems like he joined the service in January 2021, and his original assignment was with the 6th Squadron, 1st Cavalry Regiment, 1st Brigade Combat Team, 1st Armored Division. His unit went home while he was in jail, and he was administratively attached to a unit from the 4th Infantry Division when he crossed the border.
Well, fast forward to today, and the situation has not gotten any simpler. United Nations Command has begun a dialogue with North Korea about Private King, and this is something the Deputy Commander at UN Command, British Lieutenant General Andrew Harrison, confirmed, that although he did decline to provide further details, citing the sensitivity of the discussions.
It is unclear what King's current condition is and whether the North Koreans have responded constructively to the communications initiated by the UN command. Harrison has said, "None of us know where this is going to end. I am in life an optimist, and I remain optimistic, but again, I will leave it at that."
Well, I tell you what, this raises questions about what North Korea's intentions might be with Private King. the situation could potentially escalate into a much bigger diplomatic issue concerning the current tensions on the Korean Peninsula. I mean, whether they're going to use Private King for propaganda purposes, whether he truly is detained and is being currently interrogated, whether he's going to declare defection status and say, look, I'm a defector, that would definitely play into North Korea's hands.
That's right. It is speculated that North Korea might wait weeks or even months to provide any meaningful information about King. Some analysts suspect that North Korea could try to use this situation to get concessions from the U.S., such as reducing its military activities with South Korea.
Well, I tell you what, we can't predict how this is going to unfold, but we'll definitely be keeping an eye on this evolving situation. We hope Private King is safe and diplomatic dialogue will lead to his safe return.
Yes, our thoughts are with Private King and his family during this difficult time. Now, Barrett, you were stationed at the demilitarized zone in South Korea. What was that like?
Yeah, it was my first job in the Army, and I was an air assault rifle platoon leader, and I was 23 years old when I had that job. One of the most awesome experiences that I had. I had 36 men under my command, and we were stationed at the demilitarized zone about 12 miles away in Camp Casey, South Korea. And this is when I was in 1st Battalion, 503rd Infantry Regiment Air Assault. And I tell you what, we were on the DMZ. We're doing an exercise called Rock Frost up at the DMZ. And one of the first things that we were doing was holding a squad exercise that the Battalion Command Sergeant Major put on to win the Battalion Command Sergeant Major's award. And so every squad in the battalion was given a map and had a list of instructions, and it was a squad-led activity. I decided to go ahead and attach myself to one of the squads just kind of as an observer status to watch. I wasn't allowed to help, and I tell you what, I did make a mistake by not having a map with me. And when you go to the demilitarized zone, as you're moving around, prior to leaving, all officers are required to go into this room and be searched and have maps and paper and pencils and pens taken from you. And there's 2 U.S. guards. They unlock a door and you go into a room that's all by yourself, and it has a single easel with a poncho liner covering the easel. And so you go underneath the poncho liner so that only you're visibly looking at what the document is. And it's a very large poster, like I said, on a butcher block size paper of an easel. And it has all of the minefields all throughout the DMZ clearly on the southern side, because we don't know where all the mines are on the northern side. But it had by year, what type, and where each location was for every single minefield on the DMZ. And it is the most heavily mined border in the world, most heavily mined location in the world. And so what you had to do was memorize your route, not be able to take any notes, memorize your route, and be prepared to walk along the DMZ just knowing where the minefields were. And so when I handed over my map, as a young lieutenant, I forgot to get it back so that I could do the exercise with my squad. And I tell you what, the old adage that you can't spell lost without an LT, never rang truer. And so during the infantry officer basic course, we were always taught to know where we were at all times, and we had our maps with us. But I'd never had a map of mine confiscated before. And so it kind of slipped my mind as I was trying to remember where all of those mines were, both anti-tank and anti-personnel, all those minefields at the DMZ. So we were maneuvering around the DMZ during the squad competition, and it had gotten to nighttime, and the temperatures had gotten to -40. And I don't know if you understand -40, or if a lot of people out there understand -40. -40 is cold, absolutely cold. At this point in time, It was only the second time in recorded history that the Han River had frozen over, and the first time was during the Korean War when the North Koreans were able to roll their tanks directly across the river without having to use bridges. So it was really cold. And as I said, okay, hey, look, give me the map, and tried to figure out where we were, I saw a compound off in the distance. And so I took myself in the squad with me, and we came up to a guard shack, and two soldiers came out. They were not American. They were obviously South Korean soldiers. They came out, and they yelled something at me. And I'll be honest, I don't speak Hangul, and so I kept going, and I kept saying, look, we just want to use the telephone. And I got closer and closer, and they yelled something again, which I couldn't understand. And so I got closer and said, look, we really just want to use the telephone. We're lost. And I took another step, and they both kneeled and chambered around from their rifles. And that I did understand. And so I had a Korean augmentee to the United States Army, a Katyusha, that was embedded into my squad. My platoon had two of them. It's a vestige from the Korean War when the United States personnel were really being depleted out of platoons and companies, and so the South Korean Army augmented U.S. forces by providing these Katyushas, again, Korean augmentee to the United States Army. And Sergeant Coe came up and said, "Sir, they're saying if you take another step, they're going to shoot you." And I said, "Well, Sergeant Coe, why didn't you tell me that before?" And he said, I thought you spoke Hangul. And I was like, I don't speak Hangul. So please ask them if we can use their phone. And the short answer was no. So that's how tight it is at the demilitarized zone. They do not mess around. It is an active war. It's currently only sitting at an armistice. We do not have peace. There's not been a peace treaty. It's currently a pause in the fighting since the 50s, and they definitely, both sides, treat it as such. And I tell you what, it's very interesting. At the DMZ, they have the North Koreans have loudspeakers that are broadcasting 24 hours a day, and it's full of propaganda. You'll hear a feminine voice in very good English say, come to the land of milk and honey, come north and you'll be treated like kings, please come to North Korea. And North Koreans have spies in South Korea, and they will do a lot of dumpster diving through trash. In some instances, they get hired unwilling or unknowingly by U.S. military forces. And so if you find people going through trash, what they're looking for is personally identifiable information. And so they're looking for names and units and social security numbers. So yeah, you'll be lying in your sleeping bag on the DMZ, and over the loudspeaker you'll hear Private Smith, John, social security number 1234567. Your mother misses you. Go home. And you're like, that is absolutely crazy that they're reading off these names and serial numbers, and it's definitely the surreal experience. So the border is no joke. Like I said, I hope Private King is well and being treated well. We want to get him back home because we hate having U.S. service members under control of foreign militaries. But I tell you what, it's just absolutely amazing.
Well, Barrett, sounds like you had quite the experience on the DMZ.
Yeah, it sure was. But I tell you what, so that wraps up our second segment of this podcast. Please stick around for the third segment after these messages.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy our show with all the stories we share, we would love your support.
And it's as easy as clicking that subscribe or follow button. This will ensure you never miss an episode and keeps us bringing you these important stories. Your support makes a huge difference. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast family.
Thanks, and keep tuning in.
Over the loudspeaker, the Marine Corps detachment will declare, a classification destruction protocol, and alarm will sound, and they'll say go. Hi, welcome back to our third segment to episode 1 of the Azimuth podcast. I'm Barrett, and alongside me is my amazing wife, Kimberly. In this segment, we're going to talk about the legal issues facing former President Trump concerning the potential mishandling of classified documents at his Mar-a-Lago home in Florida. In August of 2022, FBI agents secured hundreds of classified documents that contained some extremely sensitive information. And last week, a court date was set by District Judge Aline Cannon for a May 20, 2024 trial date. I tell you what, that's smack dab in the middle of the Republican primary season, with a 2-month-long trial crashing straight into the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, mid-July 2024. Will this affect Trump in the primary in a positive or negative way? Well, we don't know. However, while all this has been in the news, I haven't really seen a good explanation of what a security clearance is, what levels of security there are on documents, how to get one, and even how damaging to the United States the release of sensitive information causes. Both of us have held a high-level U.S. security clearance during our time in service, and we felt it was essential to shed some light on the intricacies of these clearances.
Thanks, Barrett. Security clearances are a cornerstone of national security. They're the mechanism that allows trusted individuals access to classified information or restricted areas after an intensive background check. They are a way to protect our nation's most sensitive information.
Yeah, exactly. But what many might know is that there are different levels and several levels of security clearances. We start with confidential, move on to secret, and then top secret. And there's even another level above that called sensitive compartmented information, or SCI. Now, for 5 years, I held a top secret SCI clearance, and you held a top secret clearance.
That's right. And each level has a different potential damage factor if the information were improperly disclosed. Confidential might cause damage, but if you look at top secret or SCI information, if disclosed, it could cause exceptionally grave damage to the national security of the United States. These are not just labels. They matter significantly.
And while we're talking about national security, let's look beyond our borders for a moment. The Five Eyes is an intelligent alliance between the U.S., U.K., Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. And these countries share sensitive intelligence with each other on a level of trust and collaboration only possible with the stringent security clearances. So you could see a document that's labeled secret Five Eyes or top secret Five Eyes. That means that document could be shared with any of those 5 countries.
Exactly. Now, it is important to note that obtaining these clearances is not a walk in the park. For a confidential clearance, the process can take anywhere from a few weeks to a few months. For a secret clearance, the duration can extend up to a year, while a top secret clearance can take up to a year and a half.
Now, you may be wondering, how does one get a security clearance? The process involves an extensive background check after filling out a government form called an SF-86. The background check will include a check into your financial history, connections to foreign nationals, criminal records, and federal investigators talking to your friends and family while combing through your social media accounts. The higher the clearance, the deeper the dive, which also costs the government more money. A secret level investigation can cost about $75,000, with a top secret check costing $100,000 and SCI investigations costing around $150,000. With our national security at stake, there are many things that could potentially disqualify an applicant, such as having high levels of debt, which could make you susceptible to foreign influence. Give me this document, and I'll give you the money to pay off your credit card. Another potential disqualifier for the highest level clearances could be an undisclosed adultery or being a gay individual that hasn't come out of the closet yet. And to be clear, being gay is not a disqualifier. It only becomes a problem if it's a secret. Both of these situations could be used against you if a foreign intelligence agency threatened to out you if you don't comply with their demands for information.
And that's not all. Having a clearance does not automatically give you access to all of the information at that level. You must also have a need to know that information. For instance, a military officer working in logistics will not necessarily have access to intelligence information, even if both are classified at the same level. An example of this is the pending case against Air National Guardsman Jack Teixeira, who had a top secret security clearance and allegedly leaked classified information on a private Discord site. He had the clearance, so he could work on the classified IT servers, but misused his clearance to access documents he did not need to know.
Yeah, now let's debunk a common myth. Not all high-ranking officials automatically receive high-level clearances. Take a senator, for instance. They're not granted access to all the country's classified information simply because of their position. They need to undergo the same vetting process as the rest of us. However, there is one notable exception to this rule. The President of the United States will be given access to any government or military information they request, even if they wouldn't normally qualify for a security clearance. It's one of the unique aspects of the role. Even if that individual has a felony on their record or has mishandled classified information in the past.
And while we're on the topic of access and restrictions, let's talk about no form. It stands for no foreign nationals. It means that the information cannot be shared with any foreign nationals, even our closest allies. This often applies to some of the most sensitive information we have.
All of these procedures and precautions are in place for a reason. As classified information gets leaked or falls into the wrong hands, it can have dire consequences. It could jeopardize military operations, expose intelligence sources and methods, and harm our relations with other nations.
Absolutely, Barrett. This is why the concept of need to know and restrictions like no foreign are so important. They add another layer of protection to prevent unauthorized disclosure.
I mean, security clearances are all about trust and protection. They ensure that the sensitive information is only accessible to those who need it, and who can be trusted with it and know how to handle it.
So when you hear about security clearances in the news, remember, it's not just about background checks and clearances. It is a complex system of trust, verification, responsibility, and crucial safeguards working together to protect our nation's secrets.
So when I was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Army, I held a secret level clearance up until I transitioned to being from an infantry officer to being a foreign area officer. And the new position required a top secret SCI level clearance, which was pretty intense. I informed my friends and family that investigation was coming, and even so, when the federal investigators came to their business offices to ask questions, it caused quite a commotion with their coworkers trying to find out what was going on. I'm sure it was quite the talk of the week at the water cooler.
Yes, when I got mine, I sent little texts saying, "Hey, I'm getting this job. People might be asking you about me. They're from the government. It's no time to joke about things we did in college or anything like that. Just be honest. Yes, I did work here. Yes, I did live here with you for these amount of years." And they were still surprised. Like, they were asking me this, and I saw this, black car driving down the driveway, and they spent 2 hours here. So, it was quite interesting having people from a small town with zero experience with the federal government.
And you and I, we both moved around a lot. I moved around a lot in college, and definitely moved around before I met you in the Army. And I know you lived a lot of places as well. Was there anything that was key to keeping your address list?
I think it helped both of us out. Amazon is not only your best friend for Christmas shopping, it is also your best friend in reminding where all you've lived, because you just check your little mailbox under your account and you're like, oh my goodness, I can choose all these different addresses to ship my box to. Oh yeah, these are places I've lived. Or you could check your order history. So that helped a lot.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was just crazy. Because I even had all the addresses when I was deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan, all of the APO-AE and APO-AP addresses and all the different forward operating bases that I was in. It was easy peasy getting all those addresses down. So that was absolutely amazing. But speaking on the security in the embassy that we were in Morocco concerning classified documents, if you recall, I had to enter the Office of Security Cooperation's classified information, the safe was in my office. And you remember all the security doors that I had to go through just to get to my desk. It was silly. And it was literally something like the intro to the 1960s show, Get Smart. with having to go through all of the doors just to get to the top secret safe that was co-located in my office. Now, my office, the little, or as I like to call it, the little teeny closet that I was in under the stairs, had the only classified safe that was in the entire Department of Defense side of the embassy. And there's lots of departments in the embassy. There's the FBI, and they're usually the legal attaches. There's Department of Transportation. There's the Department of Agriculture. There's even the CIA with the station chief and things like that. And they have all of their own safes. But the DoD's safe, Department of Defense's safe, was in my little closet under the stairs. And it was a significant event in order to get in there. But I tell you what, I'd gotten back from traveling from my base of operations in the embassy in Rabat, Morocco, coming from another country. And I came in over the weekend, and I saw that there was a pink security violation from the Marine Embassy guards on my desk. And it said, "You left classified material out, and you're in big trouble." So I went down to the Marine Guard desk, and I said, "Hey, this is me. Can you tell me more about this classified information that was left out on my desk?" And they said, "Well, sir, it's in this sealed security envelope." And I said, "Well, can I see it?" And he said, "No, sir, you can't see it. We have to wait until the Marine Chief Guard comes in on Monday." And so I was absolutely just beside myself because I'm so careful about classified material. And so I told my boss, who was Lieutenant Colonel, he was the chief of the Office of Security Cooperation, and he was, "Barrett, I can't believe you left something out." And I was like, I just don't understand how this happened. I've been gone for the last week, and I haven't even been in my office. And so anyway, once Monday came around and we looked at the document, it was a Navy document, and I was like, "Look, I don't have anything to do with the Navy side. I'm in the Army." And the Naval Programs Officer owned up to it and said, "This is actually my fault. I went into the classified safe area and pulled this document out, and I was unfortunately lazy and didn't get this document back in." And so the fact that it was a Navy document and had nothing to do with my job in the embassy, and the fact that I had been gone for the past week and wasn't there to access the safe, the security violation was ripped up. And the significance of that is when you do a reinspection of your security clearance, there's a section on the SF-86 is, "Have you ever been written up for a security violation?" Yes, no. And so I could just see my reinvestigation being damaged due to the fact that I had this security violation. But luckily, the security violation was ripped up, and unfortunately, the Navy Programs Officer did receive the security violation, which very honorable that he owned up to it, but it did save me.
Do you think politicians understand the importance if they don't have to go through the biannual training?
I tell you what, Kimberly, I don't think they have an appreciation for it because, especially, when you look at all of the documents that the president and vice president, or President Biden, when he was vice president, and former President Trump have, I don't know if they have the full appreciation for that, because they didn't have to, attend all of the online death by PowerPoint classes in order to continue to have access to security, security access to computers and saves and access codes and things like that. I mean, it is really enough to make your eyes bleed through the death by PowerPoint. Now, let me say, it is very important. It truly is important to go through the training. But after a while, doing it twice and or 4 times a year for 10 years straight, you're ready to program the training yourself, and in that. But I tell you what, here's how seriously the embassy took the security of the documents. So in the embassy, as I alluded to before, it's guarded by a Marine Corps detachment, and approximately 7 to 10 Marines. All of the normal guards are all single. They can't be married. The detachment commander can be married. So Usually it's somebody that has done an embassy duty before, and so has experience after they've come back, gone back to the fleet, and then come back to the embassy. And but it's the Marine Corps detachment's job to protect all of the people, the facilities, and the documents inside the embassy. And so twice a year we would have what was called a shred drill. Now, every department that I listed before, all the alphabet agencies and their classified material, all have shredders. And we're not talking about the shredders that you see in the movie Argo or Lord of War, where you put it in and it takes the piece of paper and puts it into maybe 30 teeny little strips. These are cross-cutting shredders that really turn the document into a fine powder. And then it goes into a burn bag, and then that fine powder is burned. And so we're able to dispose of classified information, to the very minute level. Effectively, it turns into just a bunch of atoms. So, but the Marine Guard does a shred drill twice a year. And so as you're just normally going through the year, you accumulate 1 foot of discarded paper documents. So obviously it's not classified information, just unclassified information. But if you're printing out a Word document and instead of recycling it, it goes into the shred test box. And when you accumulate 1 foot, you just kind of leave it alone and you measure it. You actually measure it to make sure it's 1 foot of documents. And over the loudspeaker, the Marine Corps detachment will declare, a classification destruction protocol, and alarm will sound, and they'll say go. And so what you do is you time yourself to shred that 1 foot of documents through the shredder, and you have a little stopwatch, and you're feeding the documents one right after another, and you're also, again, it's 2 people helping you push documents through the hole and getting it timed. And so you time yourself on how long it takes you to shred 1 foot of material. And so once that's done, you take that time and you go and you measure with a measuring tape all of the classified materials that you have in your area. So in this case, we only had the safe. So all the drawers of the safe, you take all the documents out, you measure them, and you calculate how long, how many feet you have, and how long it took you to do 1 foot in order to get the total time that it would take your department to shred all of the documents. And so what would happen is each department would turn that into the Marine detachment, and then that would give them the time that they knew that they needed to defend the embassy from any potential attackers. And so we practice this twice a year, and it's the real deal. I mean, you're setting yourself up for success just in case there's an incident such as the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, Iran, being overrun, and highlighted in the movie Argo, but being overrun and having the ability not to shred the documents. The State Department and diplomatic security have learned a lot since then, obviously. And so it's just, an amazing opportunity to showcase and train, and it's muscle memory. So when you know how long it takes and you've got a dry erase board with that number, it's the real deal.
So how do you think this will affect the trial?
Sure. Yeah. So, it is kind of interesting to see, how much this is really going to affect the trial. I mean, as we get in, we're in, kind of the primary season. We haven't had any votes yet, so it's kind of the preliminary primary, right? And we are seeing President Trump's poll numbers increase, and I know that he is also fundraising off of the the alleged mishandling of the classified material. But I tell you what, when you listen to the former Attorney General Barr's statements of the more than 30 indictments that he has, or charges that he has, Barr said, even if only half of them are accurate, then there's probably a significant problem. But we'll see. I mean, as we the trial is set for May 2024, and again that butts right up against the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, and so really most of the states will have already cast their primary ballots. So typically at the national convention, whether it's the RNC or the DNC, you're going to have the candidate announced, and then once the candidate's announced, then you go into the general election. Now, on the Republican side, there's still about 5 states that would not have had their primary before the RNC convention, and so they have their primary afterwards. But they are kind of smaller states. So if a person has the lion's share of the states during the primary, I don't know if the last 5 are going to be able to sway it. So they're probably going to have the announcement. So at that point in time, what happens if Trump is found guilty? Does President Biden pardon him? Because again, let's walk the dog and say that former President Trump is found guilty. As we know, the president is the only person that automatically gets security clearance, even if they have a felony conviction or a misdemeanor conviction, or even a mishandling of classified information. I mean, that could be an administrative hit put on him. So if he was having to fill out an SF-86, have you ever received a security violation, pink slip? Yes, no. In this instance, President Trump would have received a pink slip, right? But we know that an SF-86 is not filled out by the president, just automatically is granted that clearance. And so, it's up in the air. Well, what do you think?
Well, court dates can get moved. And so what if it doesn't happen until August or September? So I don't know. People might still support him even in jail. Well,
yeah. So, President Trump's team, they wanted to have the trial after the election. Is what they wanted, and the federal prosecutors wanted it before the primary season. So they wanted it kind of now, and so the judge split the difference, and that's kind of how it got a May 2024, and it is an interesting scenario because it's something that has never happened before in our country's history. So this is beyond interesting. It is interesting to note that a lot of the Republicans have not dogpiled on President Trump for this. In fact, they've been very supportive, and so it is kind of interesting to see exactly how this is going to play out. Because again, we don't have a textbook or an outline for something like this before. And so it's definitely interesting to see, and it's clearly something that we're going to continue to be talking about as we move further through, our podcast careers. But it's all up in the air. I mean, it's all up in the air. Well, this concludes our third and final segment of our first Azimuth podcast episode. We're so glad to have expanded the conversation to each and every single one of you, and we hope to build a relationship, learn, and grow together as we seek to ensure our country stays on the right path. We're planning on releasing full episodes on Mondays, with the individual segments released throughout the week on all of your favorite podcast platforms. Take care.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy our show with all the stories we share, we would love your support.
And it's as easy as clicking that subscribe or follow button. This will ensure you never miss an episode and keeps us bringing you these important stories. Your support makes a huge difference. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast family.
Thanks, and keep tuning in.